with our LCs with the L3s this morning and learned a whole lot and hope to help that to transition into our meeting and more that we will be able to accomplish in the time that we're here today. We're going to start off by briefly asking you to briefly, I'm going to emphasize briefly because I struggle with breathe, but I'm going to ask you all if you would briefly introduce yourselves and tell us something that has excited you about the work that we're doing, whether it's the work we've done today or something that we've been doing, just very briefly. So if you would give your name, what county you're from. I learned when I moved to Kentucky about 22 years ago that it's important to know what counties people are from. And I love it because everybody takes pride in their own county. And so that's what we're going to have you do is tell us your name, what county you're from, and something that is exciting you or has excited you about the work that we've been doing. Go back as far as last year or what we're doing right now, what happened today. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Do I have any volunteers that's really excited about standing up and sharing who they are? And I have a dear friend and accelerated committee member, Cassie House.
My name is Cassie House. I'm from Franklin County, so this is my backyard. And one of the things that has been exciting and invigorating for me is that the values and beliefs, it's nice and validating to know that like across our state that everyone is ready for a change. Like we're ready for something, you know, like say the revolution, the moonshot, whatever it is, but that we know that this is needed. So that is for me what I'm excited about.
Someone grab the mic from Cassie.
Tara Wooden, LaRue County Schools. I'm going to pick something more recent from today. Even I think it's really nice to see people as a part of the L3 program that are in different spots and seeing how they are scaling up their work and how where we are fits into where we are now and where we're going to want to be.
I'm Amanda Reed. I'm from LaRue County as well. And I think an exciting thing for me, and specifically from today, is Karen Perry sharing, I think you said 117. Yeah, 117 districts either into the work in one way, shape, or form. And every time I hear a stat, it's growing. And that's really exciting to me.
I am Susie Harris, and I'm from Berea Independent Schools. I teach JAG, Jobs for America's Graduates, and I'm excited today to hear of the thinking about all students and how to show that they all can be successful and how we can make that happen for all students. So.
My name is Dr. Diane Hatchett. I'm superintendent at Berea Community Schools, also known as Berea Independent, and I'm just excited to be here and be part of the work. It's important, anything we can do to open doors for students to provide opportunity and access.
Hi, I'm Darlene Barnes, and I'm from Jessamine County. And I was just really excited to like hear and see more concrete examples today of these big ideas I've been learning about. And it's actually all kind of starting to come together in my head today. And so I just kind of sat there during lunch, like it was like this piecing it all together moment. So that was really exciting. To go.
You want to take it.
Hello, I'm Delaney Stevens from Pulaski County. Glad to be here today. I think really what resonated with me was just being able to hear how schools and districts are focusing on hyper-local solutions based on their local context. And I think that's really important when we think about, you know, what that student experience looks like and what the desired result needs to be, taking that into account.
I'm Betty Edwards. I live in Jefferson County, but I'm an education consultant with Special Olympics Unified Champion Schools. And what I really liked about today was the increased attention to applied learning and student engagement in their own learning.
Good afternoon, Jerry Cooper. I live in Woodford County and work for Cognia. We do a lot of work in Kentucky with schools, with accreditation, and I've really enjoyed being a part of of this committee. What I was excited about today was just seeing the journey that these L3s are on. Because they're in different places, but they all have a passion about the work that they're doing. And that journey, I think, is really important, seeing them grow.
Hi, my name is Rob Collins. I work here at KDE, but I'm a lifelong Greenup Countian. I was really excited by just the air of collective action in service of kids. So I'm really excited to see that work.
I did not know I would introduce myself, but I'm Melissa Chandler. I'm also here with KDE. I just take notes for the Accelerating Innovation Committee. But I've been excited to learn about this work. I'm like a product of way back when in the 90s. So when Betty, you talk about things that took place back then with assessment, I was like, hey, that was me. So I'm glad to see that we're kind of moving back towards that.
Hi, I'm gonna sit down. My name is Nellie Wright, and I am from Carter County. And just to kind of speak to why I'm excited about the work that we are doing, I have 3 kids, and so 2 of those are going to get to experience this work, and it's going to really benefit, I think, where they end up and how they end up getting there and the skills that they're able to acquire during that process. I remember when I was in high school, I grew up in Pike County, and my family was not very wealthy. And so college was not something that I ever really thought about. And when I did start to think about maybe it's something that I want to do or I'm capable of, I knew that I could be a nurse or I could be a teacher. And I faint at the sight of blood. And so I knew that this was my path and no regrets. But for a lot of our kids, they come from similar situations and circumstances. And so I feel like this is just so important for those kids.
My name is Jennifer Fraley. I'm also from Carter County. And I think what has excited me today is just knowing that, I went into a career. I didn't go into a career to make kids miserable. I went into a career to make learning fun for kids and help kids to be successful. And that is what we're doing. And we're making their learning relevant. We're helping them to be successful. We're helping make sure that our communities become better because of the work we're doing with our kids. And that's just exciting to be a part of it.
Paul Green, Carter County. We just know we need to do things differently. And it's good to hear from all the other school districts that are working hard to change the way they're doing things. And it's a difficult task. And I just appreciate all the districts that are on board with this. And we just want to, work with them to create a new system that works better for all of our kids.
Hello, I'm Susan Dougal, live in Shelby County. I'm just excited because I'm retired. I just get excited to be in a room with all of these people sometimes, and I'm not babysitting. But I'm also excited to be able to work with districts across the state and just know that the L3s, those 18 districts are doing some wonderful work, but there are so many more from every corner of our state that are also doing that. And I'm excited to bring all of that together in our learning.
Good afternoon. Susan will pass it by, so I'll take it. I'm Kevin O'Hare. I'm in Office of Assessment Accountability. So I work with Jennifer every day and her amazing group. And I have not got to be as heavily involved in a lot of this as we've continued to move through. But just hearing the conversations this morning and the excitement and what's going on is very uplifting. And so glad to be a part of this and glad to have the opportunity to be here with you today. So.
Hi, I'm Brandy Howard. I'm the Chief Academic Officer of Bullitt County Public Schools. I'm also excited to be with like-minded people and to hear the progress that's being made around our state.
Hi, I'm Mike Ekbudit. I'm Director of Engineering Programs at GE Appliances. I'm a parent and community partner with Bullitt County Public Schools. And as a community partner, it feels a little bit like on the outside looking in all the time. So it's nice to get a peek behind the curtain, even though I see some of you in virtual meetings. It's nice to put names to faces and get to feel the energy and the excitement around how we're changing education. So thankful for the opportunity.
Hi, Travis Hamby from Allen County, and I would just say what's exciting for me is to really begin to see the trends that are bubbling up from across the L3 districts, and I remain very hopeful about the future of assessment and accountability in the state of Kentucky that really does create that picture of a child as more than more than just what a test score can reveal about that kid, and honors that with our students across the Commonwealth.
I'm Amy Newsome, and I'm with Floyd County Schools. And the thing that excites me the most is thinking about what this means for our communities in our state economically. When I live in Floyd County, so our economy is not very good. So partnering with the community partners and doing this work is helping to grow our community, but partnering with you guys here in this room is also helping to grow our state.
I'm Joel Wolford. I'm an elementary school librarian from Russell County. I've been on leave the last 4.5 years serving as KEA vice president. And I'm excited anytime that educators come together to develop ways to make things better for our students.
Did we miss anyone?
Hi, my name is Karen Perry. I work at the University of Kentucky. I am excited. Anytime districts that are doing innovative work get to feel like they're not alone in doing innovative work. And so it's nice for to convene districts together. And I'm excited about the learning that happened here this morning. So.
Hi, Sarah Snipes. I'm program manager in our Division of Innovative Learning here at the department. Also a proud mama who cares deeply that her 3 boys are seen and honored in our education systems. And so that's really why I show up today and every day to push and keep pushing until that system is our reality. And so it's also encouraging for me just to be in a collaborative space where we do challenge each other, but in a way that drives real promising, lasting change. So excited about that.
Hey, everybody, I'm Donnie Tran. I work for the Center for Innovation and Education. It's been such an energizing morning. I think one thing that's been really exciting is acknowledging that there's a lot of curiosity from other states and a lot of curiosity from the federal government around like what's happening here. And I think it's another beautiful opportunity for Kentucky to lead the way, as it so often has in so much of its history. So thanks for letting us be a part of it.
Thank you all. That was very inspiring for me as well to hear you talk about what you've gotten out of today. And for me, I just took notes thinking about the collective effort that we're making to make a difference for children. And you all use a lot of the words that I use all the time: service for children, progress, learning, making learning fun. Statewide was more than anything is that we are a state that's united, and statewide we're trying to show that we are united. And the growth, looking at growth and what we're going to do moving forward. And all of that leads to the future. Thinking about what is the future of education going to look like for our children. And Kentucky has an opportunity to stand on the national stage and say, we believe in our children and we believe in their future. So thank you all again for coming. For our people that are online, I don't know if I can get them to talk. I see Sarah Hatton is on there. And I don't know, there may be some other people. Can they go ahead and jump in and share and introduce themselves? All right, Sarah, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry I couldn't join you all today. I'm Sarah Hatton, I'm the Director for Secondary Instruction for Adair County Schools. And I am excited to hear about the learning that you all did this morning and to move forward.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah is our former chair of our committee and always very supportive of us. And I just want to give a shout out and a wave to all of our other supporters, Andre and Laura, that's our team. Love you guys. And then we have Lillian and Paul. I don't know why Susan's up there because she's right over here. And then Helen and all the other ones, everybody that's on, we're so excited. And we really do appreciate you taking the time out for in the afternoon to come and join us. So we're going to get ready to move forward with our agenda. We don't want to delay anything, but just keep in mind all the wonderful things that you've heard, the people that you talk with and will have an opportunity to talk with later on, how we're going to move this work forward. And we are determined that it will happen, and it will happen with the success for the children of the future. Thank you very much. And I think I'm turning this over to Jennifer now.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for that introduction. As a way of bringing our folks that are online and the folks that are here in the room with us together, we want to make sure that we have an understanding of where the Accelerating Innovation Committee has been, and then what we did this morning as far as the L3 work. So as background for our L3 members who are staying, so we really appreciate your time and you taking the interest in sharing your knowledge with us. As an Accelerating Innovation Committee, we started with the Cool Council. It was one of the 3 standing committees that began with the Kentucky United We Learn report. And I'm using this diagram here that started with the aspirations that came out of the United We Learn report. It was around accelerating innovation, providing vibrant learning experiences for our students, and collaborating with communities around policies and moving those Kentucky education forward in very meaningful ways. So as the Accelerating Innovation came together, we started out by learning. The first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to learn both about accountability inside Kentucky and what has happened in the past, as well as outside Kentucky. So those first few months, we kicked off the Cool Council in November of 2022. Our first meeting as an Accelerated Innovation Council was in December of 2022, and we've met monthly since that time. So we worked really hard to meet our mid-year deliverable, which was a report. And the design principles came out of that report. So we did learning. We looked at the historical pieces within Kentucky. We had a group that researched other states in the United States. They also looked outside the United States at different accountability programs, and it all culminated in that mid-year report. So out of that learning and that research, the committee members came up with those design principles. Those are those value statements that the members thought that really resonated, that any future system should reflect these design principles or those values. So those design principles, they're not a checklist, but it's a way for us to look back with any idea or recommendation or maybe proposal to say, are those meeting those design principles, those things that we really value? And those are, at this point, are in draft. They're not finalized yet from the department, because we want to continue to hone those, to make them better, to make them more understandable and concrete for people to then utilize any system and be able to critique any system or proposal on that. So that was our first step, is that research around the accountability system. So our long-term goal is this moonshot. The moonshot is for Kentucky to be prosperous, to launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to students. So to get there, then we are at a place where we are looking at essential features of a system of systems through a menu of options. So that's kind of where we are kind of in through the design principles to those essential features. And that's what we need the L3 group to help us understand where the learning that you all have taken place, that has taken place in your districts, what are those options for that menu? What has worked well? What are those design principles that you all and those theories of action that you all have been taking in your local districts? What's working well? What's happening well? What are some obstacles that you've encountered so that as Accelerating Innovation members, we can then take forward with that learning and then to toward operationalizing some type of system. Now, you've heard these terms, system of systems and menu of options. So as we think about those, a system of systems is a format in which that the state would define a system and then the local districts would have the autonomy to create their own local system. And now we have that currently in the state of Kentucky through our graduation rate. So as a state, we have parameters around a graduation. Actually, it's the requirement. I always used to saying it, graduation rate. It's the graduation requirements. We set as a state the graduation requirements, and then the local districts decide how their students are going to meet and the requirements at the local level for meeting the expectations or requirements for that local certificate that to graduate from the local districts. So it's a system that the state has created, and then there's local systems that they have the autonomy to make decisions. So a system of systems. Within that, then for the districts to be able to have some flexibility, then a menu of options. So what are those options? That's kind of where we are right now. What are those things that are happening locally that are innovative, that are showing good progress, that are influencing and having good outcomes for our students through vibrant learning experiences, portrait of a graduate, those innovative practices that are happening at the local level that could be lifted up through a menu of options. So again, a menu of options similar to what we have now in our accountability system at the state is we have an indicator currently that is the post-secondary readiness indicator. So there are a menu of options, if you will, for students to demonstrate that they are ready for post-secondary. There are opportunities for the students to demonstrate that they are career ready as well as academic ready. So there's a menu of options for the students to demonstrate post-secondary readiness. So those terms, system of systems, menu of options, although those terms are new, the applications have been in Kentucky, and we have some history there with those. Now, as we look at our agenda today, that's what we want to talk with our L3 members about is looking at and digging deeper into your innovative practices and what's happening and what's working well for you. So let me pull up the agenda. The agenda and note for you that what we're going to do today. Oops. So, so what we've had this morning is we've had demonstrations from our local labs of learning from Bullitt County, from Fleming County, and Johnson County. They have worked, they presented to the group, and we had small group discussions. So we had a really great discussions and a lot of good learning around those innovative practices. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn and do some collaboration reflecting and actually talk in small groups with our L3 members while they're here, and ask deeper questions. So ask really specific questions, because we heard some really exciting things this morning, and we want to be able to learn from you about more deeply about the things that are happening in your district. So that's our first thing that we're going to do. For our members that are our Accelerating Innovation members that have access to the agenda, there is a document that you could utilize for this session, and it has notes in it. You can take notes. There are questions to ask specific to the themes that were discussed this morning. So our groups, our Accelerating Innovation members will need to access that. That's going to help you with note-taking and guiding you through that activity. Then at that point, we're going to take a break. And if our L3 members need to transition at that time, that's a good time, because then we're going to roll up our sleeves and revisit some of the options, the menu options that have resonated with our members. And we're going to revisit those in light of the learning that we had today and the discussions we have at our small groups. And then at the end, we're going to then introduce some working group structures going into the full council meeting in April. So that's our 3 hours today. So at this point, I'm going to ask members to work with our L3. So I think that we have them at different tables here. Where are our L3 members? If you would raise your hands. Okay, so 1, 2. Can I ask you to go back there with them? Okay, so we're going to ask our Accelerating Innovation members to either stay here with LaRue and Berea Independent. If they want to talk with these 2 districts, we can come here. We've got Carter County back here, if you want to talk with Carter County, and then we've got Bullitt County. Travis, are you going to? Okay. Do you want to come back here with Bullitt? And we can go back over here. So if our Accelerated Innovation members would then choose one of the tables to go through to, and then you can have smaller group discussions. Yep. And Susan has more directions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before we move just yet, let me give you a little bit of context for what we're hoping to gain out of these conversations. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're really hoping that this is an opportunity for our AI members to understand your systems, because not all L3s got to present today. So we want to understand where you're coming from. What is it that you're doing locally? And we've suggested 3 interview questions, one, really just 2. The third one's quite big. The first is, what is that evidence that you're lifting up as valuable for your students, for your communities? What is that evidence of learning? When we're thinking about our menu of options design, what we're thinking about is, what is that local evidence that matters? What matters to your community? What matters to your district and context? What matters for your students? So those are the kinds of things we want to be listening for. And then also, equally as important is what are those local implementation considerations that we need to be mindful of as we're thinking about system design? What are the barriers? What are the facilitators? What are you running into? What's really challenging? How do you think about this scaling across your district? Those local considerations that we have no way of knowing as we're thinking through system design. It's your expertise on the ground running these systems that we need to be learning from today. And I know in addition to these two questions, our AI members will have lots of questions of their own. So we've left blank spaces for you to go ahead and write your own questions. Please, please try and capture your notes. I know it's hard when you're in the heat of a conversation and you just want to ask more questions and follow up. Try and capture the big idea so we can take this learning beyond this room today. So we'll have about 45 minutes for this, and then we'll come back together to process. Anything else? Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for taking on this task so seriously. We eavesdropped a little bit as we went around, and those implementation considerations in particular jumped out to me. We're going to all come back together now. Who is a former teacher who knows how to rally the there you go. All right, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Okay, so what we'll do is we're just going to share out some reflections. Each table was able to dive pretty deeply and substantively into the district work. What we'd like to do is sort of benefit from each other's conversations and just sharing some of the biggest takeaways. I'd like our AI committee members to take the lead on the share out. What did you hear that made an impression on you relative to the types of issues we're grappling with as we think about our system of system design? But since the L3 members are in the room, if they get something wrong or not quite right, or you want to add additional context, please jump in and help share out in terms of what the nature of your discussion was. So we'll start here with our upfront table. Who from our committee would volunteer to share out about your discussion?
Do you want me to start with one question in general or just?
Start with what takeaways are you taking into our work this afternoon?
All right. I think my biggest takeaways from talking with LaRue County and Berean Independent would be how we need to partner more with local chambers or businesses and be more flexible with our curriculum, with our pathways to meet those local needs and help our students be successful after graduation even. That's kind of what stood out with me. You want to add anything?
I think talking with the different groups, it's also important to note that it is a process, which seems like obvious to everyone, right? But if you have not started any of the L3 work and knowing that changes are coming to the assessment piece, it doesn't all have to be like all or nothing. Like there can be small steps and celebrations along the way. And then it was brought up just also being very intentional about our language. The way that we get partners on board is to make sure that we are like keeping it grounded in the standards so that when we talk to legislators who don't know a lot about our work, like they're the ones who set these policies for us that trickle down. So that was something that sort of stood out was, don't have to eat the elephant all at once, make those small steps towards progress. And that's how change just starts to happen. And making sure that we are using the language that makes sense to everyone so change can happen.
Thank you. Is there anything our L3 districts partners would like to add in terms of you want to make sure that our committee hears from your perspective as we go into this work? Oh, well, you were going to say something and then I messed it up.
We just talked a lot about how some of the things that are going on in our district and how the students are involved with project-based learning and how we monitor that and how exciting that is for the future of how students may have a choice in the end when they're testing to be more successful. You have anything to add to that?
Just sign in the standards.
And tying in the standards to the competencies so they see the work and not just that one taking a handwritten test, but actually the hands-on type of project. And we do that a lot at Berea. We've done several projects with big companies and it's changed the way the students see the learning. They've changed in like the process they made last year, they incorporated into this year's work, which is amazing because they are growing and learning through that project-based learning.
Thank you very much. We'll pass it to Delaney. Delaney.
Jerry, feel free to help me out here at any point. I was over with, I think, Bullitt, Allen, and Floyd. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Just from my viewpoint, I think there are a couple of key things that I took away. How do we clearly connect to student outcomes? So when we think about system of systems, menu of options, how are we aligning that with like what is really the desired result of this? And that's to prepare students for success after high school or K-12 in general. So how are we aligning that or folding that into the broader strategy, especially when we have all kinds of other things happening from a district standpoint? You've got Portrait of a Learner, but you've also got other initiatives and things that are happening. And so how do you build that all as one package that is cohesive and aligned and really gets to a broader outcome? The next thing was one of the key takeaways was culture building. And so how are we engendering and building, whether it's from a perspective through teachers or from school staff, how are we supporting what we want to see when it comes to assessment and accountability, or equipping teachers to bake into the cake of, how do we tie in employability skills into the curriculum and not just add it in as one other thing. So how are we kind of building that capacity and creating that culture of vibrant learning within, our own teaching culture, who maybe not be used to that in years past? And then how are we empowering families and communities to be involved with this work? And I think just from some of our conversations, that's a lot of the disconnect sometimes, is how do we bring in community members? How do we show them there's a value add for them to engage in this work? And then how do we empower families that may not see the value in, supporting some of the things happening to create vibrant learning experiences for students? And so how do we show that or provide, the value to students or to families? Jerry?
I'd just add one thing to that last part. And I think it was really important to hear from the group that we met with about the importance of building that community together. Because if we're looking at a local accountability type of system that we're dealing with, and not to use a silly analogy, but it does take a village, to do this. And to do that, you have to bring in not just say you're bringing in community members, but engage community members, engage students, engage parents, and everyone has to work together. The best example that was given over there was that right now we're operating in yards with fences. And somehow we have to figure out how to break the fences down and create a common area that we're all playing together in order for this to work. And that's going to take some work. I think the whole idea of that, we broached the question of the system of systems in our group over there. And I'm not sure there's a real understanding in the field of what that means and what that's going to look like. But until we can bring people together and really work as one group not in separate groups, just listening to each other, but working together to come to a solution on this. You know, that's how it's going to work in the future, I think, for this to really work.
Thank you, Delaney and Jerry. Do we have anybody from that group from our L3 districts that want to add? Is there a takeaway you want to make sure our committee leaves this room with today from your perspective?
But thank you. Thank you for being inclusive. Do something. Take a chance. Do something. Start somewhere. It's like playing Minesweeper. You click the button. Maybe it opens up a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's a bomb. If it's a bomb, start again. Should click somewhere else. Learn while you're doing. I've been to a lot of these meetings. We spend a lot of time talking. We send it. Sometimes it feels a little soap opera-y, where you go meeting to meeting and there's lots of overlap, and there has to be. I understand, you know, mechanics of bringing new people into new meetings, but at some point we have to translate into action and translate into something that's meaningful. And if we fail, okay, we teach our kids not right. Fail, go try again, learn. I'm asking as a partner in this group, let's go fail. Let's go fail a lot so we can win.
I guess I would just add, I think as the system evolves and becomes more clear, the direction, how can we ensure the points that are raised around the flexibility in local context and the co-creation piece, which I would just tell you for me personally has become so valuable in my district, the co-creation process. I don't want to lose that with whatever's created, right? How can everybody have that experience as we move forward to ensure the voices of every local community are heard and elevated in this design?
Thank you, Travis. Thank you. All right, we'll turn to our group over here. Who from our AI committee would like to share out? Joel, Betty?
You're going to have to add on because I've been sitting here trying to take the notes to capture everything y'all were saying, and I know I'm going to miss a lot. I think first off, for them, there was a lot for Carter County. There was a lot of interest, and it was important to them that they were going to the community and finding what was important to the community, and then finding actually a system that was a little bit different that met their needs, that looked at greater comprehension and skills that students need beyond just pure content. And they've been working after meeting and doing a lot of research in the community. They're working on a system, and part of the system are digital badges that the students get as they complete something, as they show success in something, and creating that. And the teachers have come to them and really, so those are for smaller groups of learning, the badges for specific areas of learning. And while the teachers have been involved in what all this, that the whole creation of what they're doing, they have asked, can we also know more about those badges so we will know how to demonstrate that and can work with our students? So it becomes a multi-tiered thing. And as was explained, it's not easy, and it takes time and it's difficult, but we know there's appreciation that it's a growth system and things changes and you come back and you have to be willing to do that, to go back and forth. There was concerns about our standards, and that we need to make sure that in a revision of standards that we're looking at what's needed and applicable, can be applied to today's situation and today's learning. It's not something just from the past, that you can take these standards and you can see where they apply and you understand why you're learning that or why you're teaching that. So it's not just slope, right? And see, I've even forgotten what slope is, but you've mentioned it twice. So so that you really are taking and you're getting important content, but how do you apply that? And that happens in classroom learning and also demonstration learning through assessment. And when it comes to the assessment, there is, how do we balance this, or what will the system look like? So I think there's concern about what will our final system look like. Is there a balance between local and state? Is it local and we vary what that looks like? Is it state? What is that? And I think a reflection and understanding that this is difficult. Years ago when we were doing CARE, we always talked about we were building it while we were flying the plane, because we immediately had a start on it. Well, this is even complicates that, because they're building the plane while they're flying another plane or something, because they're doing two things. It really makes it more difficult. So it's a challenging time now. They know what I think Carter really understands what's important and they're working for that, but it's not an easy time. And for us to understand, let's come up with a system that really does do what's best for the students. And I think Central, they kept talking about what is best for the students, what's best for the students. Now, what did I miss? It cannot be true. Okay. You took notes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Brilliant. Wonderful job. Thank you, Betty. I'd like to invite our virtual friends and committee members to share out the nature of their discussion. So Tracy, will you be taking the lead on that?
It seems as though Andre wanted to kick it off, and then I was going to follow him.
Yeah, I was just offering this up because I was an AI member, so to speak, with Tracy. You're welcome to kickstart it.
No, please.
Okay. So then I will say we had, so Tracy and Sarah were wonderfully sharing their own experiences in their own districts about vibrant learning. And I think, many of the things that you in the room have already talked about, many of the themes came up again. So I just want to highlight a few that stuck out for us. I think one was this discussion around the processes and the culture that you've mentioned that certainly came up in many different ways. Processes around teacher professional development, processes about the longer term consideration of the processes that learners engage in, and as a result, the consideration of both, sort of what learners are doing and what the conditions are under which they're doing the learning. And so that I think for a system for both reporting and or accountability, all of these different sides have to be considered and reflected. Related to this, I think we had several moments where we talked about this connection between in and outside of school context. So I think now with this project-based learning, there's much more of this, co-design, relationship building, and considering the realities that kids are now living in outside of the school, because that's where maybe they are doing some of their project work. That's especially as they obviously get older, even and get into the high school level, that they are that building these relationships, building that understanding, and really districts are really trying hard to honor the unique paths that kids want to take and the unique conditions that they are under, both at home and in their local communities and in terms of their life expectations. So I think a challenge for that will be obviously when you start looking across districts and even across kids, how to honor that in a way and how to reflect that and share that out in a systematic way that gets at some form of comparable understanding, let's call it that, and characterization of what is needed. There were some practical issues that we talked about. So for example, for both districts, from Sarah and Tracy, we heard teacher turnover is a real practical issue. So when we think about scalability and sustainability, they're like real costs attached to maintaining that kind of a system. So I think as much as people want that, it will be very that has to be considered. And I don't know whether you all remember, but there was the Accelerating Innovation Committee. We had originally like a scaling consideration as part of our mission, and that now is, the VLE committee is thinking about that a lot, but that is a real concern. How do we scale this and how do we collect systematic evidence? And on the systematicity, not surprisingly, perhaps, I think defenses of learning and rubrics were measured repeatedly as sort of like activities that are being done in tools that could be used for these. Although Tracy in particular underscored this importance of, for example, not seeing defenses of learning just as a singular event, but really as a process where people have to, like, along the way, learners have to justify their own and develop their own thinking and their own metacognition repeatedly. And so that would mean, for example, I think if evidence gets collected about that, you shouldn't just be looking at just the final piece of that, like maybe if there is a final event like a more formal defense at certain transition grades, but really the process overall. And that also has implications for this balance of academic versus non-academic, socio-emotional or other let's call them non-cognitive complex competencies. I think in the 2 districts that we heard from, our leaders were certainly very aware that both need to be addressed in an integrated fashion. And, people may use different kinds of curricula or programs for doing so, but there is a clear recognition that both are necessary. And I know that, for example, Kathy Stovall in our committee always makes a strong case for making sure that we honor and attend to the early literacy needs of our young learners and making sure that we design a system that is sort of equitable for all learners. So that's a way in that I saw this coming up today. So Tracy, there was a few themes that stuck out to me. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Anything I missed?
Gosh, that certainly was thorough, Andre. That was super impressive. If I were to add anything, I would say this. The thing that is always, when I think about if we were to talk about a culture of vibrant learning, like a defensive learning culture, not as an event, but process there. It's one in which the kids are constantly thinking about themselves in a reflective way that you mentioned. I've never seen a kid in a culture of state testing that thinks of themselves through that lens. But what I did talk about was kids who think of themselves outside of school through that culture of those skills and dispositions, thinking of themselves as that citizen or collaborator or innovator or resilient learner, communicator, whatever. And I mentioned examples of kids talking about themselves and even problem solving at work or whatever, and using those examples in their defense. But the goal is not just about the defense. It's about how they're being reflective as people, how they're doing that in life. And that is the goal. How are we preparing them for life? And not for a defense. It's about how are they being metacognitive, thinking about themselves, being reflective, and just dealing with themselves, dealing with life, dealing with situations. And I think that is the big deal, not just about an academic test, but also academic competencies too. So that's another story. Anyway, that would be what I would add. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's wonderful to have you all engaged virtually in this way. It's really amazing. Thank you to the L3s. We're going to take a break now. We invite you to stay. What we're doing next is we'll be looking back at our menu of options and updating and refining our ideas based on these takeaways that you just all heard. So by no means, we know it's been a long day. Thank you for your contributions. You were not expected to stay, but you're certainly welcome to, as Jennifer said. We're going to meet back here. We'll take a 10-15 minute break. We'll meet back here at 2:25 to dig into that work. Thank you all so much. Oh, we're back. So even though there's just a few of us, we're going to continue using the mic so the live stream and our virtual committee members can hear us and friends can hear us. When we were last together in February, we had taken the menu of options ideas generated in that Jamboard brainstorm, and we translated them into a table for us to sort of flesh out, dig in, add some additional ideas. and context around what we were meeting. So for example, one of the ideas that was on the Jamboard was student work products, right? We pulled that into that deeper dive table and we sort of pulled up what does that mean and what context? Are they in internships? Are they rated on rubrics? Just sort of throwing down what is it that we're thinking this means as part of our menu of options. Well, since that meeting, we've now sort of taken that deeper dive table and translated and synthesized our menu of options once again in preparation for this meeting. So we looked at all of the information in that deep dive table and we synthesized across options that sort of went together and arrived at 7 menu of options ideas. Now, these are not the final 7. Based on what you heard today, you might be adding in 10 more, right? But this is what we've done with that deep dive table. Thank you, Jennifer. So I'll just walk through them quickly so you know, we've got new folks in the room who aren't familiar with these ideas. And this is also the first time our AI is seeing these ideas presented in this way. So idea number 1 of 7, student capstone projects. So up in the top left-hand corner is just an example of what that menu of options indicator could look like if this was evidence that was valued. So for example, the menu of options indicator could include the percentage of students successfully passing a capstone project, for example, once per grade span. Now, these additional details here were drawn from that Digging Deeper document that we worked on last time we met in February. So the student work project could be generated through sort of an authentic or work-based learning experience. Work products would be scored locally by committee. The state could provide training and rubrics to support the quality and consistency of scoring. Maybe the students are presenting, maybe there's a component of presentation alongside these capstone projects where the students are talking about their growth, they're reflecting on their experience, or maybe there's a written reflection or self-assessment in some kind. Our task today will be like, okay, well, if you heard something that sort of resonates with this idea from the L3s, either this morning or in our meeting this afternoon, let's capture those notes here. What are you now thinking, now that you've heard from the L3s, about this idea that we want to make sure that we're capturing and is part of the conversation? So there's space there for that. Idea 2, student-led conferences. Again, we've got the definition or what an indicator could look like for that. And then we've got the clarifications that were pulled from that deeper dive document. Service and or work-based learning experiences, right? This is the percentage of students potentially participating in this kind of experience. Districts working collaboratively with communities to identify opportunities, making sure those opportunities are being evaluated. I won't read every bullet point. You're going to have time to do this, don't worry. Student defenses of learning aligned to a portrait of a learner. I know we heard from at least a few districts doing this today. Hopefully we know more and we're smarter about this now than we were in February. So let's capture those learnings here. Personalized learning pathways. This is one of those ones that was sort of synthesized across multiple menu options. So here, potentially, students have plans and or advisors that sort of document their learning pathways. They're empowered. They have agency to create a pathway. They don't have to sort of check a box, but they could create a pathway that aligns with their goals. They could be connected to their, or should be connected to their post-secondary options or desires, plans. Maybe there's opportunity to participate in courses that are aligned to those plans, or maybe this is where dual enrollment becomes valuable for students. Student perceptions student perceptions on the vibrancy of their learning experiences. So maybe this is where students are telling us through a survey or another mechanism about how relevant is their learning, how much agency do they have in deciding what they study and how engaged are they in school. right? This is a student survey kind of indicator. Also in here is maybe we're not just surveying students, but maybe also community members, maybe families, maybe it's sort of more of a 360 kind of survey. A vibrant learning experience observation tool. Maybe this is used as part of classroom observations. It's augmenting current classroom observation practices used by administrators. Maybe the state is providing rubrics and support and training for calibration. Maybe it's not just observing the classroom, but also school programs or artifacts. And that's 7. So what we're going to do is spend 15 to 20 minutes just individually reading through these options and then just sort of brain dumping. What did you learn today that that fits in one of these options that can be helpful for aiding our conversation about this? Maybe you heard something that's not reflected here. Add a new slide. This is not a slideshow. This is a working notes document and a slide format, right? So go in, add a new slide or 5 new slides to capture your ideas if they don't fit within one of these options. But the idea was to sort of bring the work that we had been doing in January and February into this conversation today. So first we'll do individually, and then we'll have opportunities to share. Do you have questions, concerns, ideas? Great question. Where do we find this? So if you go, let me just pull up our agenda really quickly. It's in our member folder. I can never get to our, do you know how to get to the agenda? It's bit.ly/capital M or menu of capital options. So capital M, capital O for options. Yes, Kathy. Oh, Kathy, I'm going to give you the microphone so the folks virtually can hear you. No.
I was just saying, just looking at them, I wrote them down, and it looks like several of them go into one category, just based upon the conversations that we've had. So for example, student capstone project, that could include a service or work-based. Why have those separate? Student defenses of learning, I consider that as one. And then underneath you might, I don't know, it might be named something. It would be the capstone project, but you would have a list of things underneath. And just talking to people, that's it, and hearing what the L3s had to say, it sounds like that's one of the things that is different about what everybody is doing, but also can be a positive in terms of identifying what works best for your community. So I don't know. I really want to discuss this. I don't know. I think Mike wants to discuss it too.
My question though, just as from a basic operating standpoint, are we working with the initial assumption that we're working towards providing authentic, vibrant learning experiences? Is that the target that we're aiming at?
Supporting and spreading more vibrant learning experience.
Just for the folks online, the question was, are we looking to support, is the end goal supporting more vibrant learning experiences? And I responded, yes, the end goal is to revise the accountability system in the service of that goal. Kathy's, to respond to your question, yes. So maybe the menu of options provides for districts to select which of these ideas resonates with what they're doing locally. Or maybe we're selecting one and there's a bunch of there's subcategories that fall in. So I don't think we've worked through that. So that insight is really wonderful and relevant for today. So please capture that down in your notes.
Susan, can you hear us? Am I loud? So the one thing I wanted to say in response to that, if I may, and hi everybody, my name is Laura Pensno. I'm an associate at the Center for Assessment. is just as we think about the kind of translating work we're doing this afternoon, we're taking the learning from this morning and we're kind of building that into the trajectory of work that we've done in January and February with you all, as Susan already expertly explained. The one thing I want to note as we think about what this menu of options looks like going forward is the trade-offs that exist with different decisions. So if we say we think this menu of options is structured, it should be structured in a way that districts get to kind of pick and focus on something. There are trade-offs there for how that system can situate itself relative to things like federal requirements. And there are, maybe that has some implications for some of the negotiation and advocacy that would have to happen at a legislative level, even in the state. So we don't have to get into all those details, but just know that as you're discussing these options and sort of considering what you would prioritize or what value you see in certain options and components of these options, that there are implications down the road that we're going to try to connect those dots for you as we continue this work. I just don't want that to be a surprise as it comes up later. Thank you for the moment. Sorry if that was surprising, having like a Oz voice appearing.
The reason for my follow-up question about what we were aiming at is because your response was for accountability. My question was whether or not we were aiming at the vibrant learning experience itself, because the experience itself and the accountability, while they go together, are not the same. I was just want to make sure that, being my first day in the group, that I'm talking about the right thing. It matters a lot. Specifically, the accountability. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a small, intimate group here, but we've also got some friends on virtual. So even though we can all hear each other very well, we're going to use the mic for any conversation that we're going to have, because it's all important. We don't want people to miss it. So rather than sort of formally going through option by option, I think we think about it's nice. Jump in where you want to. You were already jumping into the conversation and I messed it up. So where should we start? Who wants to start? Oh, you guys were just all talking. Don't let the mic scare you. Okay, Brandy, I'm going to pass it to you.
Just a wondering that I had around this. I really love the idea of a vibrant learning experiences observation tool. I know there's components of like the Elliott tool, which we use, that kind of capture this, but I was wondering, would the Danielson framework like be revamped, or would we really look at like what components of the framework match this vibrant learning experiences observation tool? Because I think that teachers kind of need one thing to go to indicate where they're at in their professional growth that aligns to all of this. So that was just a wondering I had from my role perspective.
Great question, Brandy. I don't know more question. I don't
So like the Danielson framework, which is what teachers are evaluated by, that tool, the experience observation tool, would that be the team of the Danielson framework, or would there need to be some revamped alignment to ensure that what teachers are being evaluated with aligns with what we're looking for when we go into a classroom? Teacher framework. And I know that's a lot of like, professional learning and
yeah, okay, yeah, so I was just going to say that conversation, that is, for example, that could be framed as a methodological, like call it mini learning agenda, right? Like if there was some momentum behind this, you could say, okay, so what are the features that we want this tool to have? what are the tools that are currently in use in Kentucky that have some relationship to this and could be either aligned or adapted. And then, once you put that sort of on the table, you could sort of say like, what would it take for both the tool and the processes around it, obviously, and the utilization of the information from that for continuous improvement to create something that the department could offer up as something more, I guess, standardized might be a way here to say that. So that might be something for us to think about, right? As a committee, it's like, how could we take an idea that people have gone to and then make it into sort of like, you can call this even a working group on something, we are thinking about doing those moving forward.
Thanks, Andre. The piece that I would add to that as well, Brandy, is we started a couple of times today. You've seen those circles, those embedded circles. Susan talked about them this morning early with the L3s, and then I brought them back up because that really exemplifies where we are in the process. We started out at the larger circle with the idea of the report and the moonshot, and then we went further down into our design principles, and now we're talking about those features right now, and we're trying to understand what. First, is it a menu of options? Is it a system of systems? We're still in that space trying to figure out that small circle, the one, that's, I think, where those questions lie, and when we would have to address those type of issues. So when we get down to, okay, what is it? I mean, what are the options? And I think these conversations are getting us to, we started with that deeper dive, and there were multiple options on there. We've brought forward 7 because in that deeper dive document, there were some that people didn't even respond to. They had no comments in it back in February. And so we kind of feel like, okay, we're honing in on what is resonating, we're lifting up as valuable processes and applications. So I think that's where those questions lie. Hold on just a second.
So Brandy, I was just thinking about what I've heard today and wondering if what fits into this conversation that we're having about the Danielson framework and teachers and tools that they'll use. I think you from Bullitt County, as well as, was it Fleming County, talked about how you engage your teachers, and you guys is that part of, I don't even know what the question is. Yes, you have that as part of your training. How does that fit into developing a tool? And then Johnson County, I think that they said they do the same thing. They have people have all the teachers make a poster. They make the poster, kids go and look at those posters and identify the teacher that they identify best with. And then they're matched with that. Now, did I get that wrong? And then they're matched with that teacher? Or it could be a counselor, it could be anyone. I'm pretty sure, not Johnson, I keep saying Johnson, but it's Fleming County. It's Fleming County. So it sounds like Fleming County and Bullitt County is thinking about the educators in this and as part of innovative thinking. Your question, is that part of what we need to be considering when we're looking at a menu of options and tools?
I think it just aligns. I think it's an alignment with. Of course, I think it's just an alignment with. So earlier when I was talking about our new teacher training and how we've made that competency based, and we went from a 1-year model to a 3-year model, those competencies are aligned with the Danielson framework because that is what they are evaluated on. So they want to perform well with that. Ask that question because as you really dig into the tool, if you look like a 2 and a 3, you can kind of do traditional things and you can get a 2 or a 3, on that. But exemplary is all of these things. But a lot of teachers, I don't mean this bad, but they're like, oh, I'm a 3, I'm good, you know, and that's still traditional practices. So if we really want vibrant learning experiences, teachers are going to have to live in the 4, not live in the 3 and dabble in the 4, which is what I know I've heard in multiple districts I've worked in, but really live in the 4 and that be the goal and where you want to be at all the time, if that makes sense.
Brandy, that to me sounds like really good internal validity evidence. It's like, you know, these are the kinds of innovative practices that you're seeing already valued by the Danielson framework. But the issue is we're not creating enough incentives for educators to feel like they really do want and need and should be living there, right? And so like, what are the types of systems that can actually help all of us rise to that occasion? And so to me, that sounds already pretty consistent with the Danielson framework. Yeah. Other reflections from today? There's a lot of notes in there. So what do you want to lift up for the group today?
Let me ask a question. Before we can determine the menu of options, do we need to know do we need to answer the question, it's a menu of options for what? Do we have that answer?
We had started with deeper learning or more vibrant learning experiences. And so that might be a place, but I think any proposal we would ultimately bring forth to the full Cool Council would sort of define, here's what we're aiming to measure. These are all the possible ways you could measure it, like post-secondary readiness indicator in high school. You can indicate there are a number of ways that student can demonstrate post-secondary readiness. So maybe it's deeper learning, maybe it's vibrant learning experiences, but Jerry, you're right. Not all of these are equal or the same. And we felt defining that up front was a little bit too constraining. So we've left it open for now. But that's ultimately something we'll have to decide.
Could I offer a reflection as well, if y'all can hear me? Hi. So, Jerry, and I want to focus on one part of your question, which is a menu of options for versus of. And so is part of your question also, how will this be used? What is sort of the end game with this menu of options? And maybe I'm interpreting that in a different way. But I think a lot of what we're trying to queue up in our conversation is sort of reflections on what is the role of the state in supporting this? What does it look like to establish a menu of options that could exist in and could be incorporated into an existing accountability system? Versus sort of thinking about perhaps a menu of options that the state prioritizes reporting, but may not be factored specifically into accountability, or parts of it is, and part, so there's some flexibility there. And so I just want to acknowledge that interpretation of what you posed, and maybe what you meant was, we want to know if we're talking about deeper learning and vibrant learning, and that's already been addressed, but I just wanted to offer that other kind of perspective on that.
This is a means by which we will measure something.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know what that something is.
But I think I agree. I don't think we can do this until we know that. Because I started going, well, this is district accountability, when we haven't even discussed what the system is going to look like. I think we have to decide that first.
Even if we took the angle of saying, here are some options of things we might want to measure so that we could start populating the matrix. So if we're going to stud whatever it is, right? Because there might be 3 or 4 it's, and out of those 3 or 4, whatever they are, there's probably some alignment of things that are common across those and some that are different. either way, starting the discussion somewhere and rolling it out and see what we missed. I don't, can we just pick a spot? And then if nobody wants that spot, we move a different spot. Along the way, we'll have identified stuff we can probably keep. I don't understand the logjam right now.
Well, if we're looking at a system of systems, so these menu of option ideas, I think that title needs a little more definition because it's ideas for what. But when I read this looks like district accountability. If that's what it is, then we need to know that, but that's not, it seems to me, and I think I said this earlier, we need that broader discussion when we think about what is this accountability system? What are the major components? Not exactly right this time, what it's exactly going to look like. What are those major components? Because this is something that seems to be addressing one component of something. But
And may I offer up there, this is Andre, may I offer up there, it's also, I mean, the accountability system is both sort of the technocratic or technical components of the accountability system, like indicators and all of that, and then resulting classification, but it's also the processes around that, right? The kind of supports that are being provided, what the model of continuous improvement looks like, and so on and so forth. And I think the idea is that Kentucky's, and Jennifer, please push back, right? But that Kentucky is invested in a variety of innovation supports that foreground that are designed to empower local districts to support the design and implementation of vibrant learning experiences. And now the accountability is, there's a desire to rejigger the accountability system in a way that doesn't essentially dismantle, disincentivize, or corrupt those intentions, right? And so this is one entryway, I think, in which people like to say, well, if we thought about this from the creation of an indicator in this way, then what could we do? But there's obviously other entryways into that thinking. But I think the intention is to really make sure that to be thoughtful and mindful in the redesign effort so as to sort of support and protect to some degree the local practices while allowing the state to do what the state has to do by federal mandate, which is to quote unquote look across and understand variability and allow for sufficient degrees of freedom in places while also requiring certain other parts and that configuration. That's how I would say that. And Jennifer, please obviously push back if you see that differently. But
Betty, is your question about adding a layer in the state accountability system for district accountability in addition to the school accountability system?
that's what this looks like. So I'm just questioning, is that what it is? Have we determined a component? If that's okay, then what is it? I'm sorry, she's shaking her head. So.
Right. So I think these menu options were generated in January and further elaborated upon in February under the premise that we were working within the school accountability system. But upon reflection, if you're looking at it and you say, actually, there's room here for thinking about what a really responsible district accountability system might look like, that could be one avenue where the state actually has a great deal of flexibility. There's no federal requirements for having a district accountability system. And so there's no then federal regulations of what it must look like. And so so that is a space where we have a lot more flexibility if that stands out to you as being a potential opportunity. It'd be an interesting one to explore.
I'm sorry, I missed the January meeting because I was ill. So I guess I'm coming in. So you're telling me this is a way of assessing individual student accountability that's part of a statewide assessment program?
These were initially conceptualized as evidence for a new indicator within the state's school accountability system, a new indicator of deeper learning, a new indicator of vibrant learning. We haven't crystallized a label for that yet. Collectively, when I say we, I mean this working group, this committee. Right. But as Andre just really thoughtfully noted, that's not the only sandbox we can play in. If this work is better suited in thinking about school identification criteria or exit criteria or district accountability or reporting, as Laura mentioned, then we can move there. You know, we're not constrained by just how it is right now.
So if I move forward based on your first answer to my first question, which was the accountability for vibrant, authentic learning, and I pick student capstone projects, which is something I sponsor as part of my normal job, then the question becomes, what elements do we want to consider and manage inside what the definition of student capstone project is that makes it a vibrant and authentic learning experience? How do I measure that? Is that fair? So if so, then I have to pick which standards are going to be represented and defined as the capstone project, because they can't be all the standards for all the students at all the times, right? So that means each one has some limited capacity. Potentially each piece of the graduate profile to represent the higher level concepts from the school district. If these capstone projects are in collaboration with a community partner or industry partner, we have to be able to vet that partner, and each project must be defined in accordance with standards and practices that we want to be included in that one, knowing that it cannot be all things. So as a part of the assessment of students, the accountability system, I have to be able to have a vetting checklist for a potential partner. I have to have the list of things I want defended for each student and which one of those will be covered in this capstone, so that I can point back to which standards are being met, which any or all of the graduate profile needs to be met. I would assume all, because those are kind of higher level, I think, for most school districts. And a way to have that evidence in writing and in verbal. And if we want to build in literacy standards or any other standards that are right, to have them included, because these have to be clearly defined with clear metrics, clear deliverables, definition of success. What I don't see on the list is a meaningful way, an objective way to evaluate whether a project submitted by a community partner is eligible or sufficient, a basic rubric for which measure so we can train, whatever we want that to be, and inviting that same person back to as an evaluator since it's their project. Is that too many things? Because if I sponsor one of these as a corporate partner, right, I know ahead of time what the definition of success is and what I expect to see from each person that's participating. I know what each of their high level metrics are. I know what the learning targets are for each of those because I'm paying for it to happen. And I expect, based on a more standard rubric of presentation and written reports and all the things that we've had to do up to now, to be included, and you get graded, paid. So I know these students maybe not. Am I off base here? Because I'm working towards what accountability means for a capstone project.
Yeah, I think you have a important perspective, Jennifer. You'll probably speak to this because of your role in sponsoring these sorts of projects. The accountability system writ large is really about informing school improvement. And so that's a little different than evaluating how you're implementing that partnership program or those opportunities within your own business. But there are shared approaches that I think you've lifted up some great points, which is we should interrogate what kinds of evidence would be most meaningful in representing our definitions of success for each of these options, or for any of these options. And that's really important. I think there are some assumptions, though, that I heard that I just want to acknowledge, which is sort of this idea of, well, people would sort of bring something to the state and it would be approved and there'd be sort of an evaluation. And I think that's maybe a separate context and not something that's been discussed at this point. I think it's more about reflecting on what are the things that we would want to measure. The idea of thinking about options later, that's a different discussion about that process. But right now, you articulated the question really well, which is let's really dig into what is the evidence that reflects the key values of how we would define success for any of these options. Thank you.
I apologize for if it wasn't clear. The point of bringing an external partner into a capstone project would be to bring the authenticity in, strictly as a potential source of project and potential evaluator to keep the connection alive in the ecosystem. Not intended to do
and to
the
be
same
clear,
thing.
I'm not speaking about bringing people in. I'm just recognizing, I just heard your questions as coming from a perspective of you've experienced that. And so in translating over like what accountability means when you're being accountable for a specific project that you're participating in, that's how I was hearing that. So I may have misinterpreted you. We absolutely agree that the kind of generative approach and what we're hearing from all of you is the value of these partnerships across schools and districts, as well as between schools and districts and entities in their community, whether they're business entities or other organizations. So not trying to speak about that. I'm just sort of reflecting that when we're talking about the accountability system in the context of this project, the lens is about accountability informing school improvement versus accountability for a specific project or a policy that a school might have in place, if that makes sense. If that distinction hopefully is helpful.
And Laura, what I would add as well is it's a process. And we are 1 year in a process, and we've had rich discussion. We've had a lot of learning, and we continue to learn about the practices that are happening. So I think the questions that you're bringing, and also that Brandy asked about earlier, are those operational items that we've got to get to, because we've first got to figure out kind of the direction we're going. We just had a moonshot that was approved just a couple months ago. So we're getting there through collaboration and input from our partners, from stakeholders, and innovators, and that's what we want to get. So that it's all about the process of getting to answering all of these really good questions, important questions. So Kathy, did you want to say something?
Just listening to you all, it seems like some of the confusion here might also be about whether the desire is to name a singular thing that the state means to measure and have people be accountable to, like deeper learning or like community partnership, or like there's lots of things you could put in there, right? Or is the desire to just create space for a local community to identify a priority, which could be any one of those things. And then to have space for that information to still be considered here. And I don't think there's been a decision about those two approaches, but I just want to point out, like listening to you, you could be talking about one or the other of those, or making room for both of those. And it seemed like it was a little mucky around it. So, okay.
Fair. Kathy?
But even if I back it up to a higher level, at some point, if we're going to do a project that involves other people outside the school district, there probably needs to be some guidance around how that happens. Who do we allow? Who's okay? How do we vet that out? What's valuable? What's not valuable? If we include a project, what standards do we want to cover or can be covered? Which practices, so at the end of the day, we certainly have to operationalize because it has to turn into a thing we assign. But backing it up all the way in, what's that from an accountability standpoint? There has to be some sort of guidance and standards to be met to create the opportunity to begin with. I assume we just can't do it willy-nilly.
You're correct. There are guidelines and, there's process in this and laws and regulations acted right now. And so the part of the moonshot is to, determine what direction to go in. And so there are opportunities within the current existing, federal and state guidelines. That's an option that we could stay there. We could, see what's available to push federally, that we, would, if we so choose to push, for changes at the federal level, that would then, force changes at the state level as well. We could decide another pathway, is to, meet federal expectations, but, push for change at the state level. So, I think that there are opportunities, for each of those three different pathways. So I think that's a part of this conversation, and that's where we're trying to get to, is as we learn, what is the priorities that is collective, not only of the accelerating innovation, but also the Cool Council itself, and learning from our stakeholders and bringing our stakeholders in. So no, there's nothing willy-nilly about it. We've got to make a pathway to get there, and whether it's a pathway that is compliant to current laws and regulations, or if we want to push on those laws and regulations and make changes to those. So there's different levels of obstacles toward each of those. So we have to choose which pathway that we want to get to, and then determine the operational features of the system. Quite a big task.
So I guess for me, then the question is, when are we going to choose a path? Whether it's operational or what's the word I can't think of. I get what Mike is saying. The L3s that we talked to today or listened to, they're doing all of this stuff in terms of working with partners outside of their local, in their local community and outside of their local community. When are we going to help to establish what that looks like in terms of accountability and assessment? We know that's something that's being done. We know that's something that needs to be addressed in terms of across the board to make sure that everybody is on the same page with doing these things. So when are we going to get, I guess it's just like, when are we going to get to it? What's the next step in the path that we're about to take? I think that's my question. What's our next step in the pathway that we're about to take?
So I'm going to go to the last agenda item because it is going to take us to the next step on that. So our last agenda item of the day is to talk about the direction that the council is taking as far as the working group and the working group structure. So in November at our Cool Council, and Karen's going to help if I get anything wrong here, we had some really good conversations and process that we utilized working groups during our November convening. At that point, what we did is we broke into several working groups that focused on more attainable tasks, focused areas that came out with deliverables. And you and other accelerating innovation members worked on multiple different projects. the moonshot came out of that working group, the VLE, the charter. We had a system of systems work group. All of those different work groups were very successful in working toward taking a step toward operationalizing a new or launching a new accountability system. So we're going to have a similar process for the April convening coming up. There are 4 working groups that are being presented, and we have some highlights of those for us. Let me get my paper.
Yeah, I'll just I'll fill time here. We are the whole reason that we're doing the working groups is really to increase engagement. So a question I even heard here just recently was, when are we going to do something? When are we going to quit talking about it? And that's really what these working groups are for. So we're to really get down to the nitty gritty of it. So we want to break down into smaller groups and be able to accomplish things. So it's kind of like chunking out the work. And so by having these work groups, then so maybe it's the AI group is saying, well, we've got all these tasks that we need to do, but now we can break into these work groups and start getting some things done. And then all of those things can come back to the AI group. And each of our committees will have different things that they want to put out there as far as the work group goes. But it's really to start doing the work, right? Really getting down to the designing and things like that. It's also to provide on and off ramps. So, we recognize that some people may not want to be a part of this for the entire 4 years because our grant is 4 years. So that's how long some of us will be here working on all of this. But we want to provide more on and off ramps that allow you to say, okay, this is something I can really wrap my hands around. I want to be a part of it, but I may be ready to leave after this. And then we may have another group where someone else is like, oh, now you're doing that. I'm interested. And it may be a good on-ramp for somebody else. So because we had a lot of really good reception to this format back in November, we're introducing it again in April and hoping to continue our work throughout the remainder of the grant period to do this.
So the 4 working groups that you'll be invited to begin working, because we're going to have time during the April convening to work, and we'll start with the working groups. The first one is engaging with communities and communications. And I think that Gretchen and Karen are going to be leading these. And I think part of the video, the small videos from this morning were part of that working group. Yes, the audio recordings. So the aim of this group is to ensure diverse stakeholder voices are included in the council beyond just this membership. The second one is learning with local districts, and that is going to be led by Sarah Snipes, Karen Perry, and others that are going to be with them. This work group is going to focus on exploring diverse practices to foster a personalized, relevant, and engaging educational system by conducting site visits and engaging with districts and group. The group aims to link local innovations with an understanding of vibrant learning. And it's going to support the moonshot. A menu of options and system of systems. That's the third working group. We're going to investigate, continue to work toward operationalizing menu of options into as an accountability indicator that could enhance vibrant learning experiences and contribute to that more meaningful, practical accountability system. The final one is going to be led by our own Andre Rupp and Meredith. I believe Paul is part of that, and Donnie is part of the technical quality. The aim is to create practical tools and support to tackle long-term technical quality issues, building a reliable resource bank of local systems and method. This includes inter-committee connections to ensure coherent decision-making and a focus on establishing a shared understanding of how to frame, investigate, and prioritize foundational technical issues within the Cole Council. So those 4 working groups are the next that next step to move forward with that. So you all, you all are the first to get to hear those. Those more information will be coming out through the newsletters and emails prior to that April convening, so that you can start thinking about and making decisions on which of the working groups that you want to be part of, not only within the full council, that convening, but also beyond that. And I think the goal is for them to work for about 6 months or so at the most. Okay.
Yeah, the idea is that these are very short term and that we continue to get things done and move on to the next thing. So yeah, hopefully less than 6 months, but no more than 6 months.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
So just today, just as an example, right? We started the conversation at the very beginning with what are we aiming at? And we weren't ready to commit. So just as an opportunity, I chose a starting point further down towards the bottom as a starting point, just start a discussion to go back the other direction, which was then detoured by what we haven't decided what the thing is. So you can't have it both ways if we're going to make any progress. You can't tell me you're not making a direction because we don't have a direction. But this is going to go in a circle forever. So either we can start somewhere and work towards something and then figure it out along the way, or we define where we're going and we go there. But it needs to be one or the other, or the committees are going to sink forever in a big circle. You'll get a bunch of stuff, but I don't feel like it's going to align to anything if we don't have a start.
So what this felt like, and quite honestly, when over the conversation in February, and again, I apologize because I wasn't here earlier, but I got right into putting these because it felt like district accountability and school kind of not, but I didn't see it I saw it as part of the district accountability, not the broader thing. So when Jerry said, so what's this bigger thing at the very beginning, I see that because it just feels like there ought to be a defined, okay, we've had all these discussions, we've heard all this, we've done the research. Now, do we have an outline of a broad system and then how this fix? I think the capstone's brilliant, but if you do the capstone and you're really not going to put a capstone in the big system, then we've done work for nothing. It's just to get down into this detail, unless you all may have a broader, I know there's the moonshot, but I don't know, maybe I just need to see that. So this is what we have done, this research, we've had these discussions. We think that our system should have these components. And then you go from those components and define those components. I guess that's the thing I'm having difficulty with.
And Susan, this is Andre, and I want to quickly say something to you and Mike. So I think the working groups are actually a good place to do the parallel exploration of this from, like, Mike, what you were saying, from different angles too, right? Like starting from the bottom up, where do I end up? What am I learning? Starting from the top, where do I end up? What am I learning? So for example, I think a task for a working group can be very simply to do what you, Mike, started earlier, for example, which is just to say, if we wanted to take these components and we want to operationalize some parameters and guardrails around that, what does that look like in a short and compact way, and sort of say, like, this is what this looks like from this perspective. And for example, Susan, from a higher perspective, you could also have a perspective where you say, let's get clear one more time on what our theory of action for the system is and how we envision that potentially being implemented, and then see where they meet. I think that can all be framed in relatively compact formats so that this isn't necessarily drags on in these, like you said, circles ad infinitum, and I think we can make some good progress there. So I want to just say that I encourage all of you who are feeling like there should be clarity and momentum to sort of raise their hands at the either before or at the cool convening and sort of like help shape these concrete tasks in a way that makes sense to them and that helps everybody to make progress, especially if we approach this from different parallel angles. So that would be my sales pitch, to sort of say, we hear you and we want to use that desire to make progress. And again, my kitty friends here, feel free to push back on that or add to that.
Just have one other question. So in the four, this sounds like very interesting committees, but you have the system of systems. So is that menu of options for the entire accountability system? Because then we get to the practical tools of that assessment accountability that supports system of systems. And if so, then how do you do 4 before you do 3? I'm sure you all have that. You've had these discussions. I know you've been living with this and I haven't. So I apologize if I'm muddying waters, but that's just because I started thinking, oh, I'd want to be on that. I want to be on that. And all of a sudden I start thinking, you know, and never mind. Never mind.
This has been really great to listen to, and I just really appreciate it. I know from your standpoint, it probably feels like really circular. I heard that, I think, said a couple of times. I think from Mike, like you, I have like trained as an engineer, you know, more or less. And I think sometimes when you have a really intractable problem, you name some of the assumptions that you're making, and then you just start designing. And I wonder if that's sort of the place where we are right now in terms of, and actually, like, instead of trying to make a single set of decisions about the assumptions we're making for the system of systems, if we actually create a few different versions that to make different assumptions, and then move and then see how they kind of play out, and then the menu of options becomes a sort of operating parameter, or it's like a thing that fits into various systems with various assumptions.
Well, we need that clarity.
And yeah, I think it's hard because we don't, I think, Jennifer, you did such a good job describing the kind of broader design challenge. It's like, are we trying to take down the federal system? Are we like designing around the federal system? Are we designing like that's a very hard thing to come to consensus on. And so I think that could be, though, your frame could be a way of segmenting different prototype ideas. It's like, okay, let's just kind of assume the federal system doesn't exist, and we're like kind of designing beyond it. Then there's one that assumes that it does exist, and we're sort of creating something within it. But that's quite different from the current state system. And then there's one that's very consistent with the current state system and, you know, and federal requirements. Like that could be a way of approaching it. But there's also other ways to approach it. But I think in terms of moving forward the system of systems idea, it may be time to just say like, all right, well, this is the box we're in for this version, and this is the box we're in for this other version, and so on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Darlene, you had the mic for a minute. Do you want to have it's last comment because we were over time. So do you want to have the final word? Anyone online? Andre, Laura? All right. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone. It's been a good conversation. It's been a long day of learning, and it's been a successful day. Thank you to Susan Strange for all of the good work today and the preparation, and her support team too. I know that there's others behind Susan. Thanks to my KDE support staff. Melissa, thanks for being here all day with us, and others. So thank you all for coming and being here and bringing your good ideas. We'll continue to move the conversation forward. The next time that we will meet will be at that convening, at the convening, April 25th and 26th. April 25th and 26th. So we'll see you back here, and it'll be here in the KDE offices. So thank
If you have any brilliant ideas or thoughts after leaving here, please don't hesitate to share. I hope you guys can hear me on camera because I'm doing it without a mic, using my teacher voice. And just say thank you again to everyone. And I hope, again, we are always open to you sharing your ideas and thoughts and good conversation. That's the most important thing, is having a conversation about where we want to be in the future. Thank you.